Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. We're diving into something I know a lot of you are really interested in: AI-driven pricing.
Yeah.
Particularly its role in e-commerce. It seems like AI is everywhere these days, and it's really shaking things up, especially when it comes to how businesses set their prices.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing to see how AI is kind of pushing us beyond those old school pricing models.
Yeah.
Like we used to have fixed prices for everything, but
Yeah.
now it's all about this dynamic pricing thing. Prices are changing in real time based on all sorts of data.
It's like prices are alive now, constantly changing. So walk me through this. How does this dynamic pricing actually work?
Well, you can think of it like a really, really fast auction happening behind the scenes.
Okay.
The AI is constantly analyzing tons of data.
Mm-hmm.
It looks at customer behavior, obviously, but also what competitors are doing, even things like seasonality and inflation. Then it uses all that information to find that optimal price point, the price that's most likely to attract buyers while, maximizing profit for the seller.
That makes those special offer emails in my inbox seem pretty basic.
Right.
So how does the AI actually figure out the best price? I mean, it sounds incredibly complex.
It is complex, but let me try to break it down for you. So first, it has to gather data from everywhere: sales history, competitor, prices, trends on social media, you name it. Then the AI has to clean and organize all that data, get it ready for analysis. We call that data pre-processing.
So it's like the AI is getting a crash course in data organization.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so then what? What happens next?
Well, now things get really interesting. The AI uses special algorithms. Think of them like recipes for finding patterns,
Okay.
to identify which factors are actually influencing pricing. That step is called feature selection.
Feature selection.
Right. Once the AI knows what to look for, it starts learning from the data. It figures out how all those different factors impact pricing decisions.
So it's like training a superpowered intern to understand your business, but
Yeah.
instead of coffee, it runs on data.
Exactly.
Love it.
That training process is called model training. And it involves feeding the AI a huge amount of historical data so it can learn to predict future pricing trends. And it's not just like a one-time thing. The AI continuously learns and improves as it processes new data.
Wow. So it's always evolving, always getting smarter. But with all this automation, are we losing the human touch? What about human oversight? Where does that fit in?
That's a really important question. And the answer is that human judgment is still really essential. As good as AI is at crunching numbers and finding patterns, it needs human guidance to make sure that the decisions it's making actually make sense, in the real world.
So it's a partnership.
Exactly.
The AI is a tool and we're the ones wielding it.
Right.
So for businesses who are thinking about getting started with AI-driven pricing, where do they even begin? It all sounds a bit intimidating.
Well, you don't need to be like a tech giant to benefit from this. Start by just evaluating your current pricing strategy. What's working, what's not working, where could AI add value? There are also tons of AI solutions out there that cater to different budgets and needs. You've got Pricing Competera and many others.
Okay, so start by understanding your own needs first, then find the right tools to fit. What are some of the biggest risks businesses should be aware of when they're venturing into this AI-driven pricing world?
Well, one of the biggest risks is relying on bad data.
Okay.
That they say garbage in, garbage out. If the data you're feeding the AI is flawed, the pricing decisions are going to be flawed too. You need to invest in high-quality data sources and make sure that data is clean and reliable.
Data hygiene is key.
Yes. And another risk is neglecting the human element. AI should be a tool to augment human decision-making, not replace it entirely.
It's all about finding that sweet spot.
Right.
Where humans and AI are working together effectively.
Wow.
So before we move on to the impact of AI-driven pricing on customer perception and behavior, I want to touch on some real-world examples of companies that are already using this technology successfully.
Okay, great.
I mean, we've got to start with Amazon, right?
Of course.
They're like the poster child for AI-driven pricing. I read that they adjust prices on thousands of products every day to stay competitive and, of course, maximize their revenue.
They've really mastered it.
Yeah. Another company that comes to mind is Netflix. I know they use AI to personalize subscription prices. Could you tell us a bit more about how they do that?
Sure. Netflix is all about, understanding their audience and catering to their needs and preferences.
Yeah.
And they use AI to analyze a ton of user data. So they look at things like demographics, viewing history, churn rates, all of that to come up with that perfect price.
So it's not just one price for everyone. It's a very personalized pricing structure. That's super interesting. Let's dive a little deeper into these examples and other companies that are doing really interesting things with AI-driven pricing. Ready to continue our deep dive?
Absolutely. Let's go.
So we just talked about how companies like Amazon and Netflix are already using AI to fine-tune their pricing strategies. But I'm curious, how do customers feel about this?
Yeah.
Aren't people going to be freaked out by prices changing all the time?
It's a good question, and it's definitely a valid concern. I think transparency is super important here.
Okay.
Research has shown that when companies are upfront about why prices are changing,
Yeah.
when they explain it clearly, people are generally much more accepting of it.
So it's not enough to just have the AI doing its thing behind the scenes.
Right. You got to bring the customer along for the ride,
Yeah.
build that trust,
Makes sense.
show them that you're not just trying to squeeze every last penny out of them.
So are there any real world examples where dynamic pricing is already working and people are okay with it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Think about ride-sharing apps like Uber and Lyft.
Oh, yeah.
We're all used to seeing those prices surge when demand is high, right?
Oh.
But they do a pretty good job of explaining why it's happening.
Yeah, they show you the map with all the little cars and you can see why the price is going up. It makes sense. Doesn't mean I like it, but I get it. But that's different, right?
Yeah.
Because those are short-term changes. With AI-driven pricing, we're talking about prices potentially changing all the time, right?
That's true. And that's why clear communication is even more important. If companies can tie those price changes to things that customers understand, like increased production costs or special promotions, then they're more likely to be okay with it, even if it means paying a bit more sometimes.
So it's about striking that balance, profitability, but also customer perception.
Right.
But even with the best communication, what happens if the AI makes a mistake?
Yeah.
What if the data is wrong or the algorithm goes haywire?
That's why human oversight is so important. AI can do amazing things, but it still needs human guidance to make sure that those decisions make sense in the real world. You need people who understand the data and the big picture to make sure the AI isn't going off the rails.
So we're back to that partnership idea. AI is the engine and we're the drivers. This all makes me wonder, what skills do businesses need to be developing if they want to really thrive in this new AI-driven world? It's not just about knowing your profit margins anymore, is it?
No, definitely not. You have to be able to understand and interpret the data, speak the language of AI, so to speak, and then translate those insights into actual business strategies.
So data literacy, analytical thinking, maybe even some AI fluency. Sounds like the workforce of the future is going to need a whole new set of skills.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the technical skills either. As AI becomes more powerful, the ethical considerations become even more important. Businesses need people who can ensure that AI is being used responsibly and fairly.
Right. It can't just be about chasing profits at any cost. We have to make sure that AI is being used to create a more equitable and inclusive economy, not one that leaves people behind.
Couldn't agree more. And we also have to consider the impact on workers. As AI takes over more tasks, are we going to see job losses in certain sectors?
That's a big question. I mean, what does this mean for the future of work? Are we all going to be replaced by robots?
Not necessarily. AI will definitely change the nature of work, but it's also likely to create new opportunities. As businesses rely more on AI, they're going to need people who can manage those systems, interpret the insights, make strategic decisions based on the data. It's a shift more than a replacement.
Okay.
From number crunching to strategic thinking, from data entry to data interpretation.
So those uniquely human abilities, critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, empathy, those are going to become even more valuable as AI handles the routine stuff.
Exactly. It's all about finding that synergy between human and artificial intelligence where each one complements the other. That's where education and upskilling are so important. We have to prepare people for this new world.
It's a call to action.
It is.
We can't just sit back and watch this happen. We have to actively shape this future and make sure it benefits everyone.
You got it. This isn't just about technology, it's about choices. What kind of future do we want to create? An economy driven by algorithms and profits, or one that puts people first? Fairness, sustainability, human well-being, those are the things we need to focus on.
Those are big questions. They're probably ones that we'll be wrestling with for years to come. But that's what I love about these deep dives.
Me too.
They give us a chance to explore these complicated topics and have these important conversations.
It's about sparking that curiosity, encouraging people to think critically, and ultimately empowering them to make their own decisions about the role of technology in their lives.
So we've talked about how AI-driven pricing works its impact on businesses and consumers, but we haven't really touched on the bigger societal impact.
Right.
And I think that's a really important part of this conversation.
Absolutely. Understanding those broader societal implications is key to making sure we use this technology responsibly.
So let's dive into that in our final segment.
Sounds good.
We've talked about how AI-driven pricing impacts businesses and customers, on an individual level. But what about the bigger picture? How could this tech reshape our entire economy, our society as a whole?
That's the big question, right? I mean, the widespread adoption of AI-driven pricing has the potential to be really transformative in a good way, and maybe not so good. It's like we're opening up this Pandora's box.
Ooh, it's a powerful image. Pandora's box. So where do you see the biggest potential benefits? Like, what could a world with AI-driven pricing actually look like?
Well, one really promising aspect is increased efficiency. Imagine if every business could optimize their pricing in real time. Potentially, we could see less waste, fewer markdowns, and ultimately lower prices for consumers.
Sounds like a win-win.
Right.
But you mentioned potential downsides, too.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that worry you?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is that it could actually lead to increased inequality.
Okay.
If companies are just using AI to maximize profits, without thinking about fairness, it could make things worse for people who are already struggling.
Yeah.
Imagine a scenario where companies are using AI to charge higher prices to people they think are less likely to shop around. Maybe folks who aren't as tech savvy or who have fewer choices to begin with.
That's a really scary thought. It's like we always say technology isn't neutral. It reflects the values of the people who create it.
Exactly.
So we have to make sure that AI is being used to build a fairer and more inclusive economy, one that doesn't leave anyone behind.
100% agree with you there. And it's not just about being fair to consumers either. We have to think about the impact on workers too. What happens when AI starts taking over jobs that humans used to do? Especially jobs like, pricing and sales forecasting. Could this lead to job losses in certain industries?
It's a valid question. What does this mean for the future of work? Are we all going to end up replaced by robots? Give me some good news.
Well, I don't think it's quite that dire. While AI will definitely change the types of jobs that are out there, it's also going to create new opportunities. Businesses are going to need people who can manage those AI systems, interpret the data they generate, and make smart decisions based on what the AI is telling them. It's more of a shift than a complete replacement.
Okay.
From number crunching to strategic thinking. From data entry to data interpretation.
So those uniquely human skills, critical thinking, problem-solving, creativity, empathy, those become even more important as AI takes over the more routine tasks.
Exactly. It's about humans and machines working together, each playing to their strength.
It's that partnership again.
Yeah. And that's where education comes in. We need to make sure that people have the skills they need to thrive in this new AI-driven world.
It's a call to action. We can't just sit back and watch this happen. We have to shape this future and make sure it benefits everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
It's not about the technology itself. It's about the choices we make. What kind of future do we want? One that's all about algorithms and profits, or one that prioritizes people fairness, sustainability, all of those things?
That's a really profound question, and one that I think we're going to be grappling with for a long time. But that's the whole point of these deep dives, right?
Yeah.
To explore these complex issues and get these conversations started.
Exactly. It's about sparking curiosity, getting people to think critically, and helping them make informed decisions about the role of technology in their lives.
So we've covered a ton of ground today, from how AI works to the potential impact on society as a whole. Any final thoughts for our listeners? What are some key takeaways you'd like them to remember?
I think the first one is that AI-driven pricing isn't going away. It's a fundamental shift that's already happening, and its impact is only going to grow.
Buckle up, everyone.
The second takeaway is that AI is a tool. It's not a magic solution. It needs careful planning, thoughtful implementation, and human oversight to make sure it's being used ethically and effectively.
AI and humans working together.
Right. And finally, the future isn't set in stone. It's up to us to decide how AI is developed and how it's used to create a world that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
That's a powerful note to end on. It reminds us that we all have a role to play in shaping the future of technology, making sure it serves humanity, not the other way around. Well, it's been a fascinating conversation. Thanks for joining me today.
The pleasure was all mine. Thanks for having me.
And to all of you listening out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into AI-driven pricing. We hope you found it informative, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little inspiring. Until next time, keep exploring, Keep learning and keep asking those big questions. This is the Deep Dive, signing off.